It was a quiet evening in Vermont, the kind where the air feels thick with the smell of pine and distant rain. The sun had already dipped behind the hills, leaving a slow orange glow over the valley. Inside a small wooden cabin by the lake, a man named Ethan sat by the window, staring at his reflection in the glass. He was 52, rugged from years of working outdoors. But lately he'd been feeling something he couldn't quite name, like the world had quietly moved on without him. Welcome to Inspired Living. Tonight's story is about finding your way back to yourself when life seems to have gone still. Ethan had once been a carpenter known all over town for his craftsmanship. He built porches, tables, boats, things that lasted. But after losing his wife Grace cancer 3 years ago, he put down his tools. His workshop stood silent now, covered in dust and cobwebs. He still went to town for groceries, still nodded to the locals, but the light in his eyes was gone. He spent most evenings by the lake, watching the water shift in colors. Some nights when it got too quiet, he'd talk out loud to Grace, as if she were still sitting in her favorite chair beside him. "You'd tell me to stop sulking and fix that squeaky floorboard, wouldn't you?" he'd say with a small smile. But the smile never lasted long. One day, while getting his morning coffee at a diner, he overheard a group of kids talking about building a treehouse. They were arguing about how to make it strong enough to hold their weight. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle softly. One of them, a red-haired boy, noticed and asked, "Hey, mister, you know how to build stuff?" Ethan nodded. "A bit." The boy's face lit up. "Can you help us? We've been trying for weeks." For a moment, Ethan wanted to say no. He didn't want to get involved, didn't want to feel again. But something about their eager faces reminded him of a time long ago, when he and Grace had built a small swing in the backyard for their daughter. He missed that sound, the creak of the rope, the laughter that came with it. So he said quietly, "All right, kids, let's see what you've got. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a moment to do it now. Join our Inspired Living family, where every story reminds you that it's never too late to rebuild your life." That afternoon, Ethan found himself standing under a large oak tree at the edge of town. Surrounded by pieces of half-cut wood, bent nails, and a pile of enthusiasm. The kids were hopeless with a hammer, but their energy made him laugh for the first time in months. "You've got the right spirit," he said, "but you're doing it all wrong." They spent hours working. The kids fetched tools, and Ethan showed them how to measure, cut, and fit the boards properly. When the sun began to set, the frame of the treehouse was standing tall and solid. As they looked up at it, one of the girls said, "It's beautiful." Ethan looked at her and realized she was right. Not because it was perfect, but because it was built with life. Over the next few weeks, Ethan helped them finish the project. Word spread around town that he was back at it. Hammering, sawing, teaching. People started stopping by his cabin again, asking for help with little projects. "Just like old times," said Mary, the diner owner, when she brought him a slice of pie one evening. But one visitor changed everything. A young woman stood at his door one morning. It was his daughter Lily, now 27. She lived in Boston and hadn't been home in almost 2 years. "Hi, Dad," she said softly. He froze for a second before pulling her into a hug. They sat by the lake for hours that evening, talking about her job, her new apartment, and the memories that lived in the house. "I didn't think you'd ever touch those tools again," Lily said. Ethan smiled faintly. "Neither did I. But I guess sometimes, life gives you a reason when you least expect it." Later that week, the town held a small fair by the lakeside. Ethan decided to set up a booth. Nothing fancy, just a few wooden birdhouses and picture frames he'd made. To his surprise, people loved them. They didn't just buy, they asked questions, shared stories, and thanked him for bringing warmth back into their community. One old man even said, "It's good to see you living again, Ethan." That night, after everyone went home, Ethan stood alone by the lake. The reflection of the fair lights shimmered on the water. He whispered, "You see that, Grace? I'm still building, maybe not for us anymore, but for something bigger." Winter came soon after. Snow blanketed the hills, and the lake froze over. Ethan's cabin glowed warmly at night now, with visitors stopping by for coffee and conversation. On weekends, he hosted free carpentry lessons for the kids. The laughter that filled his workshop made it feel alive again. One afternoon, he noticed Lily sketching something at the table. "What's that?" he asked. She smiled. "An idea. I want to open a small art studio in town. Maybe you could build the furniture?" He chuckled. Guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Months passed. The studio opened, and it became a local favorite. Paintings lined the walls, wooden benches filled the space, and every piece of it carried their shared touch. Sometimes, Ethan would sit in a corner, carving little birds out of leftover wood while Lily painted nearby. People often stopped to watch them, and one day a man said, "There's something peaceful about watching you two work. It feels real, That night, as father and daughter closed up shop, Lily said softly, "You know, Mom would have loved this." Ethan looked up at the stars through the window and smiled. "She's here. She never left." The years rolled by, but Ethan's small acts of creation continued to ripple outward. The children he'd once helped now brought their own kids to his workshop. The town began hosting an annual Build and Paint Day, where everyone, young and old, came together to make something with their hands. And each year, they dedicated it to grace and the spirit of renewal. Ethan had started that journey lost and hollow, convinced life had taken everything. But what he learned was simple. Grief doesn't end by forgetting. It heals by creating. By choosing to build something new, you keep love alive. He often told the children who came to learn, "Don't wait for life to feel perfect. Just start. Pick up your hammer, your brush, your hope, whatever tool you've got, and build anyway." And maybe that's the secret all along. Healing isn't a moment. It's a process, quiet, patient, and often built from the smallest acts of courage. If this story touched you, take a moment to like, share, and tell us what you're rebuilding in your own life. Thank you for watching Inspired Living. Until next time, stay hopeful, keep creating, and keep living inspired.